Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for attending today. My name is Nada Al-Falou, and I am the Director of Student Services at PSSAR, the Palestinian Students and Scholars at Risk Network, the primary organization in Canada assisting students in Gaza with navigating university applications. Today, we are joined by Saliha Farouk, Dr. Bruce Mabley, Dr. Sean Tucker, and Sharif Awad. Each speaker will share brief remarks, after which we will open the floor for questions. For members of the media, we kindly request that you email info@pssar.org with your contact information so we can share updates and follow-up materials regarding this important issue. Since October 2023, all 12 universities in Gaza have been destroyed. As a result, PSSAR was created to support Gazan postgraduate students who were displaced by war, helping them complete their applications and maintain access to higher education. Today, 136 Palestinian students from Gaza have been admitted on merit and awarded scholarships in graduate programs at 26 Canadian universities. Yet, they have been waiting for more than 20 months for their study permits. About 100 of these students remain trapped in Gaza because there are no biometric collection centers and because the Minister of Immigration has refused to use her authority under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act to grant exemptions. Meanwhile, the UK, France, and Italy acted quickly. The UK publicly announced biometric exemptions in September 2025 and evacuated students within weeks. It is estimated that over 90 students were given visas and evacuated by the UK government. Over 120 students were given visas and evacuated by the French government. Over 50 students were given visas and evacuated by the Irish government, and 50 students were given visas and evacuated by the Italian government. Canada has not exempted biometrics, nor has it evacuated any students. In fact, even students who escaped Gaza and completed their biometrics in Egypt and completed their visa applications are still facing delays of over 20 months or so. Applications for Palestinian students are simply not being processed. In December 2025, Minister Lina Diab reaffirmed in committee that she would not exempt biometrics, even though it is impossible for students in Gaza to provide them. At the same time, students who are in Egypt who have submitted their biometrics are not being considered for priority processing and in fact are having their social media and that of their families screened. This has created a policy of exclusion. More than half of our students have been forced to defer their studies. 15 have already lost their offers. 20 more have gone to Europe instead of Canada. These are not hundreds of thousands of students. We are talking about 130 students seeking temporary study permits. Two ministries are responsible for this outcome: Immigration, which refuses biometric exemptions and priority processing for those who have evacuated, and Public Safety, which has imposed prolonged secondary screening. Together, these policies block Palestinian students from coming to Canada. Today, we are asking for three things. First, that students with completed biometrics or exemptions be placed into priority processing. Second, that Public Safety removes this discriminatory and biased policy that excludes Palestinians from Canadian academic institutions. Third, that the Prime Minister's office lead a coordinated response between immigration, global affairs, and public safety. Canada can fix this. It is a matter It is a matter of political will. I now invite Dr. Sean Tucker to share his remarks.
Good morning. I'm Sean Tucker. I'm a professor at the University of Regina and also have an affiliation with University of British Columbia. Today I speak as an academic who cares deeply about international students and about Canada's role as a leader in research and development. Over the past year and a half, I've been in regular contact with Eid Ogle, a very talented student in Gaza who, along with his family, has survived what can only be called hell on earth. Eid's family has been displaced multiple times due to targeted bombing of residential buildings and the leveling of entire communities in Gaza. Last July, during the famine, Eid texted me, "The situation here is very bad. There is no food. I've lost consciousness several times over the past few days." During the genocide, Eid volunteered to help others in a prosthetics clinic, and then when there was internet access, he managed to apply for admission to a program in his field of study, biomedical engineering. Eid told me that his goal is to return to Gaza to help rebuild healthcare systems and strengthen research institutions. In September, Eid received a letter of acceptance from the University of Alberta. Finally, good news and hope. But danger is ever present. Days later, he texted me, "Explosive-laden robots are being detonated in the neighborhood where I live." Later came some good news. Funding from the University of Alberta, a lifeline. The pieces were falling into place, or so we thought. The final piece, a study visa, remains elusive for Eid and other students. I share Eid's stories because I care about him and because it reflects the uncertain future that many scholars at risk face in Gaza. Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which Canada endorsed in 1948, unequivocally states everyone has the right to education. It also states higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. As academics, we are very frustrated by what appears to be the Government of Canada's indifference and bias against a group of highly qualified students. I have never seen students excluded so clearly based on where they come from. We must ask why Palestinian students are being treated differently. Well, European countries such as the UK, Italy, and France have actively facilitated the evacuation of accepted students from Gaza. Canada has remained silent. We have lost students to other institutions in Europe. Many universities, leaders in Canada, and hundreds of professors understand the seriousness and the urgency of the situation facing these students. Research projects are stalled and grant funding risks being lost. Universities cannot defer indefinitely when external funding is involved. If the Prime Minister is serious about upholding human rights and serious about his call to attract top academic talent to Canada to strengthen our research and innovation sector, he must intervene to expedite the processing of study visas for these highly qualified students. Time is of the essence. I now invite Selina Farouk to the podium.
Thank you so much, Professor Tucker. And good morning to everybody. My name is Saliha Farouk. I am an Advocacy Programs Manager with Justice for All Canada, a human rights advocacy organization dedicated to the prevention of genocide. Our organization has researched and published a policy report that does document these deliberate barriers imposed on these students, which I'll speak to today. And copies are available today as well as on our website, that is justiceforallcanada.org. Despite the fact that these postgraduate students and scholars hold admission letters from Canadian universities, their files remain open without any decisions or reasons or timelines. There is a lack of transparency in this process. Impacted students often learn about these measures through things like access to information requests, rather than any clear guidance from the government. For instance, enhanced screening only applies to people present in Gaza after July 2023 under a system that is withheld from public view. This process, as well as requirements which frequently change without prior notice and without published criteria, is impending on the lives of these students and causing them great risk and harm. This leaves them unable to respond properly or even understand what stands between themselves and a decision made. So the current approach requires biometrics, as we know, under conditions where collection from Gaza cannot even occur. But there is no biometric facility in Gaza because of that reason. Travel routes require passages through Israeli checkpoints and borders that are subject to sudden closure. Canada's own travel advisories describe these crossings as unpredictable, severely restricted, and unsafe. This fails basic standards of administrative reasonableness. Under established Canadian law, clear pathways forward already exist. For example, under Section 12.8 of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Regulations, there is an exemption when biometric collection often becomes impossible. Under Section 25.1 and on public policy grounds under Section 25.2, the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act further grants the Minister authority to exempt requirements on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. Through Section 3, Parliament also directs interpretation of immigration law in line with international human rights treaties which Canada should adhere to. 2 students admitted to the University of Waterloo were killed before they could even begin their PhDs. The IRCC is aware of their deaths. Over 12,000 Canadians and over 15 members of Parliament have raised concerns directly with the minister. Gaza's education system lies in ruins because of a genocide that is aided and abetted in part by the Canadian government. So today we are here to support the requests of the PSSAR, which is that completed cases must be placed in priority processing, that a fair review of applications take place without any discriminatory bias, and that the Prime Minister's office lead a coordinated response. I now call upon my colleague Sharif Awad from the CMPAC.
Thank you. Over the past 2 years, we have watched Gaza's devastation. We have also watched our government give excuses after excuse for these delays with Palestinian students. For over a year, we have heard from the Minister, Lina Diab, and the Government of Canada that the Government of Canada does not have the capacity to support students from Palestine. At the very moment when Palestinian students were being left in limbo for more than 20 months, IRCC announced a new 14-day processing program for PhD students, for PhD candidates, For academics and university administrators, this announcement was met with disbelief. It demonstrated that the government has the capacity to process study permits when it chooses to do so. Yet Palestinian students are being explicitly excluded from this program. The message to the academic community was deeply troubling, that speed and flexibility are available for some students, but not for Palestinians. This contradiction has intensified frustration across civil liberties organizations about unequal treatment within the Canadian immigration system. Canada adapted its biometrics exemption policies for Ukraine and Afghanistan. It refuses to adapt them for Palestinians. Furthermore, the minister has argued that delays are caused by extended background and security checks. But this explanation does not withstand scrutiny. If the background checks were truly the barrier, then how is it that the United Kingdom, France, Ireland, and Italy have been able to complete security screening, issue visas, and evacuate students in actually less than 2 weeks? Anyone leaving Gaza must already pass Israeli exit controls through the COGAT program. The Israeli authorities are responsible for security clearance and movement out of the territory. The process involves extensive intelligence and identity screening and is mandatory for every individual who exits Gaza. Other countries already rely on this existing security process to assess risk, evacuate students to a third country, and then issue study permits. The UK has openly used this model. France and Ireland have done the same. This shows very clearly that rapid and thorough background checks are possible when there is political will. Canada's delays are therefore not driven by security constraints, but by a policy choice to impose additional and exceptional barriers on Palestinian students, barriers that other allied countries have chosen not to apply. What is missing here is political will. Minister Lina Diab is choosing when and where to apply the law. Minister Gary is choosing to subject Palestinian students to biased background checks. We are asking for immediate biometric waivers, priority processing, and coordination between immigration, foreign affairs, and public safety before the next semester begins. I'd like to call on my colleague, Dr. Bruce Mabley, who is a principal researcher at the McKinsey Papineau Institute, to say a few words.
Thank you very much. And thanks to the colleagues for their excellent analysis. And I'm a little too old to be that serious anymore, but I appreciate it. And I just mentioned that the McKinsey Papineau think tank is nonpartisan, and it'll be important for what I'm about to say. What I want to do is I want to link my diplomatic career with the issue. It's an important issue. It's an issue that, in one of my books on diplomacy, diplomacy is not a science, it's the art of the possible. And this is possible. The question we have to ask ourselves is why it is stuck at the present, where it is now. I don't know whether you saw Jesse Ventura on TV last night, but he's a real mensch. He's a real guy, and I'm like him. So why the hell am I a diplomat? McLean's called me a rogue diplomat. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But when I was in Syria and Turkey, I had the same, very similar situation that exists now. I had people who were caught, not necessarily PhD and MA students, but people, they're all the same, and Canadians didn't want to be on the radar. Canadians hate being on the radar. We're all told to be meek and mild, not like Jesse Ventura. He isn't meek and mild, he's a wrestler. And I guess if I met him on the street, we'd start wrestling, and in the end, we'd probably have a beer together and talk about old times and you know who. But look, the message is simple. In January, in this year that is just beginning, an incredible, giant step was made. I didn't believe it. I despaired for a long time that my country would not step up and lead. And I didn't think it would happen in my lifetime. But it has. And now we have to be consequential. We have to, now we're on the world stage. We're not over there in some rock pile behind somebody. I ask everyone in this room the question, if today Canada was in an election in the United Nations for the non-permanent seat, which we lost twice in a row, a G7 country? Put up your hands. How many people think if the election was held today, Canada would have a non-permanent seat because of what has happened? I vote yes. You guys, you're working, not allowed to vote. Vote anyway. I don't see you vote. So, look, as I said, the message is simple. In diplomacy, We deal in the art of the possible. There are some people who believe that diplomacy is some complicated, huge structure, and we have to go through X, Y, and Z, almost like coming here to the press conference, through the labyrinth. But it's all very simple. It's about the Canadian people. And when people abroad, they don't know necessarily Canadians. They don't see them and touch them, but they touched me. They touched me, and for me, I had to make a decision. Am I a human being, or am I a paid bureaucrat? That decision I made, and maybe that's why they called me a rogue diplomat. But the same applies in this case. We're on the world stage. We have to be consequential, acting as if we're in the old era, and God knows it's very evident. You can't hide. It's very clear. The Allies are watching. The world is watching. And we have to step up. We have stepped up, but we cannot backslide. No backsliding. That's a difficult word. Anyway, peut-être je le dirai en français. J'ai jamais été aussi fier d'être Canadien. Voilà.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Thank you, everyone. And we will now open the floor for questions from
We're
journalists.
gonna forego the questions here. That was the urging the government to take action on Palestinian student visas, and because they're being delayed for whatever reason, and whatever your opinions might be, we'll be happy to hear them and react to them. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Have a good morning.